It all began with a divorce that made no sense. No shouting, no dramatic arguments, no broken furniture or courtroom battles. Just a single envelope left on the dining table, one rainy morning. Inside were divorce papers, already signed by my wife, Emily. She had written only one sentence at the bottom. Daniel Carter never imagined that the end of his marriage would arrive without a single argument. There was no dramatic confrontation, no shouting across the living room, and no warning that something was falling apart behind the quiet routines of everyday life. On an ordinary rainy morning, he walked into the kitchen, expecting to see his wife, Emily, preparing coffee before work, but instead he found the room completely empty. The only thing waiting for him was a neatly folded envelope resting on the dining table. Inside were divorce papers already signed by Emily, along with one handwritten sentence that read, "I'm sorry. This is better for both of us." Daniel read those words over and over, hoping another explanation would somehow appear between the lines. But there was nothing else. 15 years of marriage had been reduced to a single sentence that offered no comfort and no answers. He searched every room in the house, only to discover that Emily had quietly packed her belongings during the night. Her clothes were gone from the closet. The framed photographs had disappeared from the shelves, and even the small decorations she loved had vanished, leaving the house feeling strangely unfamiliar. Daniel tried calling her phone countless times, but every call went directly to voicemail. His text messages remained unanswered, and emails disappeared into silence. Friends and relatives soon began asking what had happened, but Daniel could only shake his head because he truly didn't know. Every evening he sat alone in the same chair where they used to share dinner, replaying months of conversations in his mind, searching for a moment he might have missed. He wondered if he had spent too much time at work, forgotten an important anniversary, or failed to notice signs that Emily had been unhappy. The questions never stopped. At work, people whispered quietly whenever he entered the room. Some believed Emily had found someone else, while others assumed Daniel must have done something terrible that no one wanted to discuss openly. Their assumptions hurt more than he cared to admit because he couldn't defend himself without knowing the truth. Despite the growing rumors, Daniel continued forcing himself through the same routine every day, pretending everything was normal, while carrying the unbearable weight of confusion and heartbreak that refused to leave his mind. Exactly 1 week after the divorce became official, Daniel experienced something so unbelievable that it completely overshadowed the pain he had been carrying. That Saturday morning, he was trimming the grass in front of his modest home, trying to distract himself from the endless questions about Emily's disappearance. The neighborhood was unusually quiet until the sound of a powerful aircraft echoed across the sky. Curious neighbors stepped outside, shielding their eyes from the sunlight as a large white private jet descended toward the nearby regional airport. Daniel barely paid attention at first, assuming it belonged to a wealthy business executive or a visiting politician. Minutes later, the quiet street was interrupted again as 3 sleek black luxury SUVs slowly turned the corner and stopped directly in front of his house. Every curtain on the street seemed to move as neighbors watched from their windows, while others openly gathered on the sidewalks with their phones raised to record the unexpected scene. A tall man dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit stepped out of the first vehicle, followed by a professionally dressed woman carrying a leather briefcase. Their calm expressions suggested they had come with a very specific purpose. The man walked confidently toward Daniel, stopped a few feet away, and politely asked if he was Daniel Carter. Confused but cautious, Daniel confirmed his name, expecting perhaps a mistake or some legal issue connected to the divorce. Instead, the stranger respectfully introduced himself as a representative sent to locate him after many years of searching. Daniel laughed nervously, convinced they had confused him with someone else. He explained that he was an ordinary office employee with no connection to wealthy people or powerful organizations. Without showing any surprise, the woman opened her briefcase and handed Daniel an elegant envelope sealed with a gold emblem he had never seen before. Inside was a handwritten letter stating that long-hidden truths about his family had finally been uncovered, and requesting that he accompany them immediately. The letter contained no signature, only the unfamiliar family crest embossed at the bottom. Before Daniel could process what he was reading, the representative quietly revealed that they worked for the Ashcroft family, one of the richest and most influential families in the world, leaving Daniel completely speechless as the stunned neighbors watched every moment unfold. Daniel sat silently inside the luxurious private jet, struggling to understand how his ordinary life had transformed in less than an hour. The elegant cabin felt more like the office of a global corporation than an aircraft, with polished wood finishes, leather seating, and a quiet atmosphere maintained by a professional crew. Standing near one of the large windows was an elderly man whose confident posture immediately commanded respect. His silver hair and calm expression reflected both wisdom and authority. As Daniel entered, the man slowly turned toward him and studied his face for several long moments before speaking. With a voice filled with emotion, he quietly said that Daniel had his mother's eyes. The unexpected comment caught Daniel completely off guard. Before he could ask what it meant, the elderly man introduced himself as William Ashcroft, the billionaire founder of the Ashcroft family empire. Daniel immediately recognized the name from newspapers and television reports. But he couldn't imagine why one of the richest men in the world wanted to meet someone like him. William then revealed a truth that shattered everything Daniel believed about his past. He explained that Daniel was not born into the Carter family at all, but was actually his biological grandson. According to William, Daniel's mother, Eleanor Ashcroft, had disappeared shortly after giving birth because dangerous people connected to powerful financial interests had begun targeting the family. Fearing for her son's safety, she vanished with the baby, leaving behind almost no trace. For decades, William invested enormous resources into finding both his daughter and grandson. Private investigators searched across multiple countries. Legal records were examined, and every possible lead was pursued, but nothing produced answers. Eventually, most people accepted that Eleanor and her child were gone forever, yet William refused to stop believing they were still alive. He carefully placed several old photographs, hospital records, birth documents, and adoption files in front of Daniel, each one connecting another piece of the impossible story. Daniel recognized the tiny bracelet around the baby's wrist in one photograph because he still possessed it among the few keepsakes given to him by his adoptive parents. William explained that advances in modern DNA genealogy databases had recently uncovered a distant family connection, allowing investigators to trace Daniel's true identity after more than 3 decades of uncertainty. while every document before him confirmed that the life he had always believed was only part of a much larger hidden story. As Daniel struggled to accept the shocking truth about his identity, another question continued to haunt him more than anything else. Why had Emily divorced him without a single explanation? William Ashcroft noticed the pain on Daniel's face and quietly placed another folder on the polished table between them. Unlike the documents about Daniel's childhood, this folder contained recent photographs. With trembling hands, Daniel opened it and immediately recognized Emily. Several pictures showed her entering expensive office buildings, sitting across from unfamiliar men in formal business attire, and leaving private meetings carrying sealed envelopes. His heart sank as countless painful thoughts rushed through his mind. For a brief moment he wondered if she had been living a secret life or working against him. Seeing the confusion in Daniel's expression, William calmly assured him that the investigation had uncovered a very different truth. According to the family's security team, Emily had become aware that powerful individuals had discovered Daniel's real identity before he ever did. Those people believed Daniel could one day inherit enormous influence within the Ashcroft family, making him a valuable target for anyone seeking control or leverage. Instead of approaching Daniel directly, they focused on the person closest to him. Emily reportedly received several anonymous warnings, suggesting that remaining with her husband would place both of them in serious danger. She was told that every conversation, every routine, and every place they visited together could be monitored. The threats were carefully designed to create fear, without leaving enough evidence for the authorities to act. Faced with an impossible decision, Emily chose to distance herself completely from Daniel rather than risk becoming the reason he was harmed. She avoided emotional conversations because she feared revealing too much could expose both of them. Even the brief sentence she wrote on the divorce papers had been carefully chosen to protect him, while hiding the real reason for her decision. William explained that his investigators had spent months verifying every detail before reaching this conclusion, interviewing witnesses, reviewing surveillance records, and tracing communications connected to the threats. Daniel slowly realized that the silence he had interpreted as rejection might actually have been the greatest sacrifice Emily could make, carrying the burden alone while allowing him to believe she had simply stopped loving him rather than placing his life at even greater risk through the truth. The flight back from the private meeting marked the beginning of a life Daniel had never imagined possible. In less than a day, he had gone from being an ordinary office employee recovering from a painful divorce to discovering that he belonged to one of the wealthiest and most influential families in the world. Yet William Ashcroft made it clear that the fortune waiting for Daniel was only a small part of what he had inherited. The Ashcroft name carried decades of responsibility: global business interests, charitable foundations, and relationships that stretched across governments and international industries. Every decision Daniel made from that moment forward would attract attention from people who supported the family, as well as those who hoped to weaken it. William explained that stepping into his true identity would require patience, discipline, and careful preparation, rather than sudden celebrations or public announcements. Daniel would spend time learning about the businesses, meeting trusted advisors, and understanding the history that had shaped the Ashcroft empire long before he was born. At the same time, professional security teams would remain close, because the risks connected to his identity had not disappeared. Daniel found himself reflecting on the simple life he had lived only days earlier, when his biggest concern had been understanding why his marriage had ended. Now every answer seemed to reveal even larger questions about his future. He also couldn't stop thinking about Emily. Knowing that she had likely sacrificed their marriage to protect him completely changed the way he remembered their final days together. The silence that once felt cold now carried the weight of fear, courage, and impossible choices. William promised that the family's investigators would continue searching for Emily, not to force her back into Daniel's life, but to ensure she was safe and free from anyone who had threatened her. Although Daniel had gained unimaginable wealth and discovered the family he never knew existed, he understood that money alone could never replace the years that had been stolen from him or erase the loneliness he had experienced. Standing at the entrance of the Ashcroft estate for the first time, Daniel realized that his journey was no longer about becoming rich. It was about uncovering the remaining secrets of his family's past, protecting the people who had risked everything for him, and proving that the man shaped by an ordinary life was strong enough to carry an extraordinary legacy.